In 15 minutes, the Saturday film is The Quiller Memorandum, the spy thriller with George Segal. Joining Michael Parkinson at 10:45 will be Ingrid Bergman, Telly Savalas, Robin Sarstead and General Sir John Hackett. And at 11:45, the World Championship fight between Jim Watt and Sean O'Grady. Now the news and sport on BBC One with Richard Baker.
Two British women were among 3 people killed in a coach crash in France early today. 37 others are injured, some seriously. The accident happened as the coach was on its way from Barcelona to Paris with more than 40 British tourists on board. They were sleeping just before dawn when the coach went off the A6 autoroute near Avallon, 140 miles from Paris. The Department of Transport has received complaints about the operators, Autocar Julia, and their driver's hours, which they're investigating. Gary Lloyd reports.
No other vehicle was involved in the accident. The coach evidently went into a violent swerve, crashed onto its side, skidded 200 yards and shuddered to a halt with its wheels in the air. Many passengers were caught in the wreckage and some were severely injured. The coach was on a regular run from Spain to Britain. French firemen had to use cutting gear to free some of the passengers. Among those taken to hospital were 2 hoteliers from Skegness, Barry Henderson and Derek Hinchcliffe. Barry Henderson described their escape.
It was late at night and most of them were asleep, but Derek and me couldn't sleep because we got one of these seats that wouldn't fold back. And I remember sort of nodding off and looking up and I had a cigarette and I could see the road from the front looking down the aisle, and we just seemed to be going along the road, and all of a sudden the front end went up on the curb and it sort of did a somersault and everything turned around. We had the seat where there's an emergency door, because the bus was full and that was the only seat, emergency door, right? And I think we were very lucky there, because if we'd been anywhere else, the seats were all leaned back and everybody was sort of trapped in the seats. When it turned over, I got flung down into the arch where the emergency door is, and everything started flying about, cases and everything, right? And people were moaning and shouting. And then I tried to open the door and I couldn't, you know? And I shouted, it was dark, I shouted, because all the lights were off, I shouted, you know, Derek, where are you? And all of a sudden his hand popped up. Everybody tried to get out the windows, smashing the windows at one side, but we were at the other side. And I could see the way out. And I tried to open the door and the door wouldn't open, it was jammed, right? When I found out Derek was sort of speaking and everything, I said, look, I've got to go for help because there doesn't seem to be anybody about. You know, we were on the middle of a motorway. So I walked out the back window, crawled out the back window, and I come round and I tried to open the door again. And there was bodies about, and people sort of staggered and dazed. And I was saying to them, come on, open the door. You know, and we tried, no, we couldn't get it. Couldn't open the door.
The coach was heading for a stop in Paris when the crash took place. Survivors said it was because coach passengers were mostly asleep that the casualties weren't greater. Because they were so relaxed, their injuries were minimised.
The Prime Minister has again said the government must stand by its economic policy despite all the criticisms. She told the annual conference of Conservative trade unionists at Reading that to deal with unemployment, it was necessary first to beat inflation. A report from Rodney Foster.
Tight security surrounded the Prime Minister, with demonstrators outside demanding no more cuts in public spending. But Mrs Thatcher told the Conservative trade unionists that, like any family living beyond its means, the government must cut its spending. The overriding aim was to control inflation.
At this time, I feel that we should recall the words of the first Queen Elizabeth, when after an earlier period of inflation, she restored the coinage in 1561. It would, she remarked, involve temporary discomfort, not much unlike to them that being sick receive a medicine, and in the taking feel some bitterness, but yet thereby recover health and strength and save their lives. Mr. Chairman, 419 years on, the message is the same, and the second Queen Elizabeth's First Minister cannot put it better.
The more the Prime Minister comes under attack for her government's economic policies, the more staunchly it seems she defends them. For after a week in which increasing numbers of government supporters have openly criticised the basic economic strategy, the message here today was that, however nasty, the country must go on taking the medicine. Good housekeeping had been Mrs. Thatcher's theme, a theme captured by the Reading delegation at the conference, who presented the Prime Minister with a cake marking her 21 years as an MP.
The refusal by Roy Mason, the former Labour cabinet minister, to be told to vote for Michael Foot for the party leadership has led to an argument with the Yorkshire miners leader Arthur Scargill. He says any MP who defies his local committee runs the risk of not being re-selected. Mr Mason says mandating MPs could spell the end of parliamentary democracy, with MPs becoming automatons. Last night, the Barnsley committee, dominated by miners, ordered him to confirm in advance a vote for Mr Foot. But, as he explained on leaving, he won't do that.
Well, I mean, it looked to me that they were instructing me to vote for one man and demanding to see my ballot paper. I didn't think that was right and proper. I explained that I wasn't a delegate, and I shall use my judgment. Although I lost the vote, by the way.
Who will you be voting for?
Can't win them all anyway, can you?
Who will you be voting for?
Well, that's not for you to know. That's for me to decide, and I haven't decided yet.
But did you tell the committee tonight?
No.
The leading Iranian newspaper, Islamic Republic, is calling for a quick decision on the American hostages, saying that Iran has now achieved most of its objectives. The Iranian parliament will try to debate the hostages again tomorrow, and newspaper reports suggest that the mullahs are preparing the nation for the hostages' release. Polish union leaders and the Polish government have been considering their long meeting of yesterday, where they discussed the Free Trade Union statute, although they reached no agreement. But, as John Humphreys reports, today is a religious holiday in Poland, and for many it was a day of rest.
Poland took a day off from worrying about the future today to look back to the past, to mourn the country's dead. On All Saints' Day, the whole country goes to the cemeteries to pray. A powerful reminder that although it's the communists who've controlled their lives for so many years, it's still the Catholic Church that commands their loyalties. If Moscow wants any proof of Polish bitterness towards the Russians, they need go no further than here. This small, bare patch of ground has become the people's memorial to the victims of the Katyn massacre, when perhaps 15,000 Polish officers were murdered in the woods of Katyn in the last war. The official government version holds the Germans responsible for that, but every Polish man and woman here today will tell you it was the Russians. They do not forgive, and they bring their children here so they will not forget. When the communist authorities dealing with the free trade unions adopt an uncompromising stand, it's generally believed that Moscow's hand is behind them. And in a country where such resentment of the Russians runs so deep, that is calculated to stiffen the resistance.
Police and mountain rescue teams have been searching all day on the Pennines for a woman hiker who's been missing from her home at Moneyash, near Bakewell in Derbyshire, for 10 days. They've called off their search for the night and will begin again at dawn. The search for Miss Betty Wood, a well-known dog breeder, is covering a 270-mile area of the southern Pennines. She'd often told friends it had been her ambition to walk the Pennine Way. A helicopter, dogs and a team of potholers joined about 100 people searching the area. Neighbours became worried and raised the alarm when they heard Miss Wood's 6 championship collies barking. They'd been left without food. And now today's sport, beginning with Britain's women tennis players. Here's David Cass.
In a remarkable final day, the United States have retained the Whiteman Cup, but the match produced Sue Barker's best win ever and a disaster for Britain's captain, Virginia Wade. Sue Barker's form in the opening match had been disappointing, but today, from 1 set and 1 game down, she regained all the power, touch and fluency that she'd displayed 3 years ago. Miss Barker beat Andrea Jaeger by 2 sets to 1. So with America 3-2 up, everything depended on Virginia Wade's match against Chris Evert-Lloyd. The British captain was playing brilliantly.
Well played.
It seemed certain that Great Britain would stay in the match when Miss Wade broke service and eventually went on to lead 5-1 with 2 match points.
Yes.
But then, despite the occasional dying challenge like this one, her game simply collapsed.
Well played, what a lovely rally.
The ever-cool Mrs. Lloyd had shown that she had the temperament for the big points, and Miss Wade had not. The Whiteman Cup remains America's.
2 Whiteman Cup points here for America. Yes, we've done it. We've done it.
In Cardiff, the All Blacks demolished Wales in the centenary international rugby test. New Zealand won by 23 points to 3, the highest margin in almost 50 years. The first All Blacks try came after 30 minutes. Bill McLaren, the commentator.
Gareth Davis up as well. Now out to Elgin Rees. Rees with that swivelling sidestep, but loses possession, and now it's fed back. Loveridge again. Allen, there is an overlap here. Out to Bruce Robertson. Robertson over the 22. Murray's outside him. Steele Wilson coming inside. Murray scores. What a brilliant try. So Loveridge again. Oh, that was cute. He's got Murray with him. Murray out in the open. Back to Loveridge. Loveridge with Hickory outside. Inside it was Mentor next to. This is Bill Osborne. What a breakout. Bruce Robertson. Robertson to Wilson. Wilson. Another marvellous tackle by Ackerman. Hickory gets the try.
In the Football League, Aston Villa moved further ahead at the top of the First Division, beating Leicester 2-0 at home. For Nottingham Forest, Peter Ward scored his first goal since being signed from Brighton as they ran out 2-1 winners over Southampton. Manchester City's captain, Paul Power, pulled his team from the bottom 3 of the division for the first time this season, beating Norwich. Here's a report from David Davis.
Manchester City have found new confidence under John Bond. It showed today. It was in the second half they had most of their best chances, but only the one was taken. Paul Power, the City captain, the scorer, but his team squandered even clearer chances. They were winning the ball more often than Norwich in midfield, but they just couldn't make it count. And within seconds, astonishingly, a similar incident. The result was Norwich almost snatched an equaliser in the last few minutes. England youth international Mark Barham had been so close and just in fashion knew was to be frustrated by the City keeper Joe Corrigan. It's now 4 wins out of 5 for Manchester City under John Bond. City 1, Norwich 0.
And here are the top 3 in the division. Ipswich had a goalless draw with West Bromwich Albion. Notts County continue at the top of the second division. They drew 1-1 at Wrexham. But West Ham closed the gap, beating Bristol Rovers away by the only goal. At the top of the Premier Division, Aberdeen romped away, beating Airdrie 4-1. Rangers lie second after thrashing Celtic 3-0. Celtic in the hoops were no match for Rangers, who'd obviously shrugged off their surprising Anglo-Scottish Cup defeat 4 days ago against Chesterfield. McDonnell came close early on, but it was the young Rangers striker Colin McAdam who scored first after 21 minutes. And Scotland's most successful boxer, Jim Watt, has retained his world lightweight title. His challenger was Sean O'Grady of the United States, and for both men it was a hard fight in the early hours of this morning in Glasgow. Both fighters received bad cuts over the eyes, but by the 12th round, it was O'Grady who was in trouble.
The crowd want the fight stopped. And it really is becoming a farce now. And the referee saying, no, you can't go on. He's seen enough.
You can see the whole fight on BBC One at 11:45.
And we'll have the late news for you about 11:20 on BBC Two, but if you won't be with us then, I'll say good night. We'll look at the weather now with Frank Greene.
Good evening. Well, it's been a very windy day, quite strong south to southeasterly winds, gales up from the north, and with neither the high nor the low moving very much in the next 24 hours, it'll be a windy day again tomorrow. Tonight, first of all, though, and there's some rain in parts of Northern Ireland and Western Scotland, and this rain pushing on across central and much of Northern Scotland too, I think, before the night's over. Some quite heavy rain about as well, and quite a windy night up in the north. A cloudy night in these northern and western parts, maybe just a little rain here and there. A frosty night, though, over central and southern parts, -1 centigrade, 30 Fahrenheit. And then tomorrow, a dry, bright day in all these central and southern areas and eastern areas. Some sunshine, a cold day, though, 9 is only 48 Fahrenheit, and a fairly brisk southeasterly wind. More cloudy in the west, there might just be a shower or two here, and a cloudy day in Scotland and Northern Ireland, some rain about. The rain clearing away from Northern Ireland, central and western Scotland later on tomorrow. Probably not very much rain in the east and the south of Scotland tomorrow, and the wind dropping out later on. That's it. A very good night.
And because of local weather conditions, television reception in some areas this evening may be subject to interference. Please do not adjust the controls of your set.
Entertainment for Sunday evening on BBC One. At 7:15, the special style of Cliff Richard in concert.
Carrie doesn't live here anymore. Carrie used to room on the second floor.
At 8:05, Mastermind. Magnus Magnusson once again tests to the limit the knowledge of 4 contestants offering a variety of specialised subjects. At 8:35, comedy into the Manor Born, and the eminent Sir Peter Allenshaw is a guest at the village meeting.
Tell me, Sir Peter, how's your wife?
I didn't realise you'd met her.
Well, I once stood next to her at Ascot, but not for long because our dresses clashed.
At 9:05, Shoestring, starring Trevor Eve.
Why haven't you answered my letter?
Was it something important?
It was about him over there.
What do you want? I just wondered if you could spare a moment. I'd like to have a quick word. I suppose somebody's told you I murdered my wife. Yeah.
Some of Sunday evening's entertainment on BBC One.
Now, the Saturday film, the fast-moving spy drama set against the background of Berlin in the 1960s. The Quiller Memorandum.